Good afternoon, everybody. This is a live emergency briefing with this radar breakdown with two tornado warnings in the Madison, Wisconsin area, including one just to the southwest of Madison that passed just to the north of the Dodgeville area. This is closing in on the Barneveld location right now, and this is a tornadic supercell that produced a damaging tornado near Boscobel, and it's on the tail end of this large bow echo. And we're also tracking this tornado warning on the cyclonic portion of this bow echo that is closing in on Madison and is likely to bring some severe wind gusts as well, depending on the mesoscale. But in general, we've got this large bow-shaped structure like this. Normally, the cyclonic portion of the bow is where you want to look for embedded tornadoes within that line. But in this case, a actual traditional supercell anchored on the southern end of this complex of storms as it was producing flash flooding across the La Crosse area. So this supercell developed on the southern edge of that complex of storms. Very strong southwesterly low-level jet, accelerated above 30 knots and created quite favorable wind shear, located right along this outflow boundary from this bow off to the north of it. That created outflow, and there was about a 1 hour window where this thing produced a damaging tornado out near the Boscobel location, and that tornado passed off to the east-southeast. You could definitely see the debris get lofted high up into the sky by that storm as well. Then that tried to cycle. The storm tried to produce another one just to the west of the Highland area. I don't think that it did produce another tornado, even though it was trying to cycle. But right now we are watching this circulation that is closing in the Barneveld area. I do think that the outflow associated with this large bow echo off to the north of it acted to undercut this circulation just to the northeast of Dodgeville. So basically you have this massive belt of northerlies, big outflow here, a lot of cold, stable air coming in from the northwest, a lot of gusty winds. And that's why usually when these storms develop on the anticyclonic side of these massive bow echoes, usually their updraft gets undercut by this cold, stable air with that outflow boundary. But in this case, there was about a 1 to 2 hour window where that storm, right on the tail end of that complex of storms, was able to produce a tornado out near the Boscobel area, Boscobel, Bell, what have you. And I did see video on Twitter that definitely confirmed that tornado happened, but we also confirmed it by radar as well through that correlation drop, lofting that debris high up in the air. But right now we're watching this circulation near Barneveld. Right now this is radar indicated. It still is trying to pull in a little bit of inflow here, but probably over top this outflow boundary that's surging off to the south. My friend Vince, that has been on that storm, could see a very large wall cloud with it. But based on the picture that he sent me, it did look like it was a little bit outflow dominant there. And this northern tornado warning, well to the north of Fall River, has been allowed to expire, but there still is that circulation to the northwest of Beaver Dam that I'm keeping an eye on. You've basically got this bulging RFD type feature here, and you could easily get a spin up tornado just to the north of a bulge like this. When you get those big westerlies starting to surge out with that RFD bulge, you get the generation of cyclonic vorticity along its northern periphery, and that's where you want to monitor for the development of these tornadoes. Basically, you get this massive surging out RFD type of a feature like this, bulging out, and really that northern side is where you want to watch for a tightening up and the development of a potential tornado there. And I just got a message from Vince. He said it's totally undercut. That confirms our thoughts for that. So even though there is a tornado warning along that southern edge, and that is a tornadic supercell, it did produce a tornado out near Boscobel. I do think that tornado warning is going to be allowed to expire, and that's because you basically have this outflow surging out like this, big outflow with a lot of the stable air off to the north. That created a linear configuration, basically the development of a bow echo like this, and that outflow consolidated, eventually overwhelmed this anchor on the southwest side that was a tornadic supercell. It overwhelmed it. That outflow sagged off to the south of it and choked it off from the main inflow off to its southeast. But we're still tracking it here at Team Dominator headquarters. We are watching for renewed development off to the northwest into southeastern Minnesota, shifting over to the radar halfway between Madison and Milwaukee. And you can definitely see that tornado-warned storm back closer to Dodgeville, just to the northeast of Dodgeville, is starting to weaken. So not as much rotation there on the tail end of that line. It does look like that outflow surged out ahead of it a little bit. Here you can see that reinforced outflow, reinforcing it a bit. And you do have probably another primary shelf out a little bit ahead of that secondary shelf. But this is where those severe winds are found, closing in on the Wenatchee area there to the north of Madison. And watching this area for the development of a potential QLCS type circulation just to the northwest of Wenatchee, between Wenatchee and Dane there in Wisconsin. It's possible that you could get a little bit of a bulge here with a pseudo RFD gust front type of a feature, and maybe get some cyclonic curvature going up on the north side of that, a little bit closer to Dane, maybe down toward Wenatchee as well. We'll keep an eye on that. Severe thunderstorm warning has been issued for that portion of the storm, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that warning also include Madison, but at least the north side of Madison is going to get impacted by this relatively strong area of straight line winds there in green. Not as much inflow here on the back side of that preliminary gust front. Here you can see where that gust front's located, so it's bulging way out here. So this storm is definitely elevated behind that initial outflow. But you never know with these QLCS circulations. Sometimes they can get that big tornadic circulation going, and then they can drill down, dynamically pipe through that stable layer, and potentially produce a tornado. But this is our original tornado producer, and you could definitely see that outflow. In fact, you've got dual outflow boundaries. The first one is about to come through Madison right now, and then you get this reinforced outflow boundary back behind it. And it took both of these to really undercut this circulation and to get rid of that tornado potential, but it was grinding earlier. You can watch the archive live update that I posted a little bit earlier that was breaking down radar as that tornado was in progress. It had a pretty big debris circulation with it as well. Here you can see this big gust front too that was associated with that original tornado warning portion of the storm. So right now the most dangerous portion of the storm is about to close in on the Wenatchee area. That's where you have the strongest straight line winds. You could get winds in excess of 60. They're coming in to Wenatchee associated with this secondary gust front. And now we've got that severe thunderstorm warning for the Madison area for these dual gust fronts that are heading toward Madison. Still got that circulation with that tornado warning continuing with that tornadic portion of the storm. That one's going to be allowed to expire in 19 minutes. But we still do have our little mesocyclone there. Barneveld, you're probably getting some decent westerlies on the backside of that little RFD bulge there. A little bit of storm relative inflow just off to the north of it, north of Barneveld there. Blue Mounds, you could get impacted by that circulation, maybe some damaging winds associated with that circulation as it heads through your location, maybe 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. Nothing that bad associated with that, but that did produce a tornado definitely back just to the east of the Boscobel area back here. I was tracking it on radar. It did end up lifting to the east of Hickory Grove. Debris falling out of the sky just to the east of Hickory Grove there as well. But that debris signature first ramped up just to the east of Boscobel and then continued off to the east-southeast. Definitely a tornado. I could confirm it by radar. There's already been damage confirmed as well. I have to dig a little bit deeper to see just how bad that damage was. But that circulation is still tornado warned, but I do think that tornado warning is going to be allowed to expire. But Blue Mounds, Barneveld areas, you probably want to remain in your safe place until it is officially allowed to expire. But you're probably getting some nice wind-driven westerlies there in Barneveld, and that RFD gust front is now approaching the Blue Mounds area. Vince, the boots on the ground there on this storm, a storm chaser friend of mine, says that the thing is done, and that wall cloud has been undercut by these dual gust fronts that do continue to blast off to the south. I was going to chase this event if the trough was better shaped and it looked like northeastern Nebraska was going to be the target area, but I wasn't going to drive all the way out to Wisconsin from Colorado for this mesoscale accident unless I knew this was going to happen. But usually the southern edge of these big bows like this, the stable air coming in back behind that bow echo will act to undercut any surface-based storms that can develop along the southern edge. Usually you want to watch the cyclonic portion of that bow. If this is kind of the halfway portion of the bow echo, then usually anywhere north of the halfway portion, the atmosphere is encouraged to produce cyclonically rotating vortices, whereas anywhere to the south of that, it's usually discouraged to produce cyclonically rotating vortices. But in this case, a supercell developed on the southern edge of the cluster that prompted all these flash flood warnings up near La Crosse. 3 to 6 inches of rain fell up here in La Crosse. We can even look at some of the rainfall data here as estimated by radar. A lot of roads being made impassable by that flooding. Who knows if there are any debris plugs or anything on the leading edge of it, but looking at storm total precipitation, you can definitely see some of these amounts in excess of 6 inches there in yellow, very close to the radar site. And during our morning weather briefing, we were looking at the La Crosse area, and we found that it was 70 over 67 there with light rain, very close to that reinforced outflow boundary. That complex of storms reinvigorated with that low-level jet and prompted these flash flood warnings. And then just to the south, a supercell was able to anchor on the southern edge of that complex of storms, and then it produced that tornado just to the east of Boscobel. And now we're still tracking that circulation that still has a tornado warning down here, but it has been replaced upstream by that severe thunderstorm warning that includes the Madison area, and probably some 50 to 60 mile an hour type winds are going to be possible with this thing. But I do think that all these tornado warnings are going to be allowed to expire very quickly as well. Thank you guys for joining my weather report here. I'm honored that so many people would tune in to my weather reports. I was chasing monsoons and flash floods over the last 2 weeks nonstop. I'm obsessed with chasing flash floods. It's very similar to chasing a tornado, kind of an extreme form of nature, and there's nothing like being in that dry creek bed. You can hear the roar of the flood upstream. You're not sure how large it is. Then it comes ripping around the corner, debris flying in the air. You can see massive trees, boulders on it. You can hear the boulders clanking together. You're in a beautiful area too, usually in a wash in the desert or in the Mountain West, so oftentimes off of a burn scar as well, like that recent tornado event off the Pine Gulch fire burn scar to the north of Grand Junction. You may have seen on my page. But I'm definitely obsessed with chasing flash floods, and I'm hoping that the monsoon gets reinvigorated next week. I have my class with varsity tutors on Tuesday. That's going to be at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 o'clock Central, and then after that, I'll be full-blown chase mode again. But definitely preparing for that class on hurricanes, tropical cyclones, flash floods, the monsoon, basically crazy summer weather that a lot of times depends on those big sprawling subtropical highs. The positioning of subtropical highs definitely determines where those summer storms will play out. But this is the formerly tornado-warned bow echo up here that has weakened even below severe limits. It just came through Beaver Dam. Probably some squally type weather there with that bow echo that just came through the Beaver Dam area. We're watching to the north side of that bulge, kind of up here within the kink of this bulging gust front, and also the gust front off to the north, kind of acting as a squeeze play. There was another little bit of a kink very close to the Beaver Dam area, but that storm has weakened below severe limits, so definitely not as much of a concern there. And that tornado warning is going to be allowed to expire too. That's well to the southwest of the Madison area, but we do have this severe storm that is coming into Madison. Damaging straight line winds, northwesterlies coming into town here with this squall line. Big bow echo there. It looks like some of the brunt is going to be coming in to downtown Madison there too. Big damaging straight line winds coming out of the northwest here. Definitely a dangerous event to behold here if you're going to be outside trapped or something in an urban area when you get a severe thunderstorm. You could easily get flying debris going through the air. Could certainly be quite dangerous there if you're in Madison on foot. But it does look like some pretty strong winds coming into Madison right now, damaging straight line winds. I'm not too concerned about a tornado threat in Madison. We are looking at La Crosse radar, so let's shift back to the local radar. There is kind of an elevated mesocyclone that's probably going to lead to some enhanced winds out here, and kind of this bulging RFD. It does have just a little bit of a mesocyclone here along its north side, pulling in a little bit of inflow over top that preliminary outflow boundary. But then you got this massive bulge here that's about to come into Madison. Big straight line winds, big northwesterlies here, 60, 70 mile an hour winds knocking on your door there in Madison. That is the leading edge. That's the shelf cloud. Looks like you've already had a little preliminary weak shelf cloud that's already come through. And now the main one coming in from the northwest, reinforced by all these big northwesterlies back behind it. That's definitely the next threat coming into Madison here. Severe thunderstorm warning that has been issued. Severe thunderstorm warnings throughout Madison. That tornado warning on the western side is going to be allowed to expire. That red box. We were tracking a tornado producer, Boscobel, however you say that. I think it's Boscobel. Went off to the east-southeast, and it had a really big debris signature, a big debris drop as well. And based on how high the debris gets lofted up, how strong that rotation is, it is possible to be able to estimate the strength in near real time. So I'm excited to look at some of that data from some of my colleagues at the University of Oklahoma that do that. But you can definitely see on velocity that we have pretty much lost that mesocyclone. It's been overwhelmed by this outflow, these outflow boundaries surging off to the south, choked off that mesocyclone from the inflow, even though you had that big southwesterly low-level jet feeding into it. Basically, this outflow here has choked off that back storm, our tornadic storm that we've been tracking, and that tornado threat has subsided with that one. But now we're watching this damaging windbag event coming into Madison. Strongest winds are north of Madison, the north side of Madison, between Madison and Windsor up there. That's where you can get some winds gusting in excess of 70 miles an hour out of the west. Looks like Madison's going to catch the tail end of that big wind, so not some big time wind there, maybe 40 to 50 mile an hour type winds in Madison, even though you do have that severe thunderstorm warning. I think that the strongest winds are going to the north of Madison, halfway between Madison and Windsor up there. Big westerlies coming in. Dual severe thunderstorm warnings. Let's see what the warning statement says, just for the hell of it here. Come on. Come on. And there are severe thunderstorm warnings all the way back into Kansas, too, that we can check. Higher base storms. Kind of on the base of that trough that was digging down into the southern plains. It's not going to let me read it, but you're going to have 60 to 70 mile an hour winds on the north side of Madison up there. But let's take a look at some of these other severe thunderstorm warnings off to the west into western Kansas. Numerous severe thunderstorm warnings out here. All windbag events. Go to Dodge City radar here. And look at these cores, outflow boundaries. This is definitely the radar image of high temperature dew point spreads and a decent bulk shear that even favors some transient supercell structures like this one behind the gust front there to the northeast of Garden City. But there's a big gust front, so that's going to mitigate the tornado potential for that storm just to the northeast of Garden. But you've got these clusters of severe storms here with damaging straight line winds. You've really got temperature dew point spreads of 30, 40 degrees out here with those dew points mixing down into the 50s. So that's why you have a bunch of wind bags out here, even behind the main gust front out here where you have, lesser temperature dew point spreads. Even those have a chance of producing some big time winds. And this is Goodland radar here, just to the southeast of Colby. Pretty big core there as well. Northeast of Oakley, north of Grinnell. Definitely a high-based severe storm there, capable of producing some very gusty winds, 50 to 60, 70 mile an hour winds associated with these. Probably not as much in the way of big hail with these storms, but it does look like you got a pretty nice core there to the northeast of Garden City, possibly producing some decent hail out there. Golf balls, winds to 60 miles an hour associated with that storm. That's a pretty nice core. So not quite gorilla size hail, but definitely hail that could crack the windshield out there, especially if you're driving and don't pull over when you're driving down the road and pull a Dominator 4 and blow your windows out. That can always be a mistake as well. But these are all the severe thunderstorm warnings here. In general, damaging straight line winds are the main threat with these storms. Relatively high temperature dew point spreads associated with those. We are still tracking this tornado threat off to the north into southern Wisconsin. Our tornado warning, as we expected, has been allowed to expire, but it is replaced with this damaging straight line wind event in the Madison area. A little bit of a bulge out to the north of Madison, so could get some 70 mile an hour winds up there to the north of Madison. Within this blob, some wind-driven westerlies up there, halfway between Madison and Windsor. Definitely need to keep an eye on that as well. But these severe storms continue in those two locations, western Kansas and up here in southern Wisconsin. And we did have that one lone tornado confirmed down near the Boscobel area. So thank you everybody for tuning in to my weather briefing. I'm going to continue to monitor this severe weather setup, and I will be live big time once I see a robust tornado threat develop once again for this event. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Hope you guys have a great Saturday evening, and never stop chasing.